I almost missed the Avalanche boom. I'm not even kidding, right? Avalanche was quietly exploding right under my nose and I nearly walked right past it. So here's the scene, right? I'm going about my week thinking I have my finger on the pulse of crypto when I see a random post on X, Twitter. And it kind of says Avalanche's real world asset market, whatever that was, grew by 57% in just 30 days. I was like, wait, what, 57% in a month? That kind of stat slapped me across the face. How did I not hear about this? Avalanche AVAX was one of those tokens that I remembered from the last bull run. I mean, I still hold a pretty decent amount. Then it kind of just faded off into the background and just noise for me. So this kind of caught me off guard just a bit. Naturally, curiosity took over here. I fell straight into an Avalanche rabbit hole. And what I found blew my mind. Big hedge funds, a US state government, even Toyota, yes, the car company, are all quietly jumping on Avalanche's bandwagon. Now, all of this in a span of just a few months, and I had no clue. Now, I'm sitting here kind of thinking, how many other people totally missed this? And more importantly, if all of this is happening behind the scenes, what does that actually mean for, well, the AVAX token itself? Is there a massive rally brewing here that I almost actually slept on through? So let me kind of back up and walk you through this wild discovery here, step by step, like a story, because honestly, it kind of felt like a detective novel where I was kind of piecing together all the clues. And spoiler, by the end, I realized that Avalanche might actually be setting the stage for something rather big, and I nearly missed the boat. So it all started with that one stat. Avalanche's real-world asset, RWA market, actually soared to about $305 million. That is a 57.3% jump in just 1 month. I had to do a double take because a 57% jump in anything in just 30 days is nuts. It's like if you had $100 and suddenly it was, $157 a month later, you wouldn't actually pay attention to that. And this wasn't some meme coin. It was real world assets on Avalanche's blockchain. Now, if you're wondering what the heck are real-world assets on a blockchain, well, you're probably not alone. I had some questions too, right? Now, think of RWAs as kind of taking real-world stuff. Things like, like parts of hedge funds or stocks or real estate, even treasury bills, and then tokenizing them so that they can live on a blockchain. It's basically bridging traditional TradFi traditional finance, TradFi, with crypto, right? And apparently, Avalanche has become the place to do it. So $305 million worth of real-world assets from 39 different assets held by 7,725 people on Avalanche. Now, those numbers were straight from Avalanche's team on Twitter, by the way. So, they were proud of it. And that wasn't even all. I kept on digging here and found Avalanche's TVL, total value locked, basically how much money is actually parked in its ecosystem, is now about $1.88 billion. Yes, that was with a B. Meanwhile, the stablecoin market on Avalanche has actually grown by over 30% last month to $2.68 billion spread across 12 different stablecoins, held by more than 3.44 million users. Now, my jaw is on the floor at this point, right? These are strong fundamentals, the kind of stats that crypto nerds drool over. More users, more assets, more money flowing on chain. It's all the stuff that you would want to see if you're an Avalanche supporter. But here's the crazy part. The AVAX price wasn't exactly following the rocket ship trajectory. In the same month that Avalanche did all of this, the token's price moved up like 9%, give or take. Don't get me wrong, 9% in a month is a pretty decent, right? Beats my savings account for sure. But with fundamentals like that, I would have expected a much bigger leap. But instead, AVAX was kind of just chilling in its kind of $22 to $26 range. In fact, it's kind of been bouncing around that range for weeks, like a stubborn resistance at around $27 that it just can't seem to crack. It's kind of like Avalanche is trying to break through a brick wall at $27, and every time it runs up, bonk, it just hits its head and falls back down. Just a little bit. Now, if you're thinking, so what, $27, big deal? Let me kind of put that in perspective here. Avalanche's all-time high was about $146 back in late 2021. So when the crypto world was partying like it was 1999, $146, right? And here we are at $23-ish, right, give or take. So still way down from its peak. Now, some analysts out there have noticed this mismatch too, right? There are some optimistic people saying that if the overall crypto market turns bullish again, Avalanche could run up to something like $80 or even up to $120 someday. Now, I know, big if, but that sounds like Moonboy talk, right? But considering it hit $146 once, $80 doesn't sound impossible if conditions are right. Now, there's also a respected analyst, Ali Martinez, who's been a bit more grounded and recently said something like $27 is the key. If Avalanche can crack $27, then we could see $46 next. In other words, crack the ceiling and there might be another almost 2x before the next big hurdle. So, hearing all of this, I had a mini kind of epiphany here. Either Avalanche is this kind of coiled spring waiting to pop, or I'm missing something and those fundamentals won't translate to price immediately. Now, I'm not thinking, or at least I'm not going to lie to you guys here, right? Is that I've seen plenty of times in crypto where great tech and adoption didn't immediately pump a coin. Sometimes it takes a catalyst or just market hype catching up. But still, the setup for Avalanche looks really interesting right now. So at this point, I was intrigued that I thought, man, should I buy more AVAX? Did I seriously almost miss out on this? And I'll be honest, I did pick up some AVAX a little while back, and then kind of just forgot about it, and its price kind of went sleepy, right? But now I'm eyeing it up again, and I bet I'm not alone. Here's a quick side note, right? If you're also thinking about trading or buying AVAX or any other cryptocurrency, you might want to check the exchanges that I use. For example, I've been using Blowfin and BitGet lately. I put links in the description down below, and those are affiliate links. So if you do sign up and trade through them, then that actually supports the channel here at no extra cost to yourself. Now, there is no pressure, but if you do need a place to trade, then they're there, and I appreciate the support. Anyway, let's get back to the story. So, what's actually fueling this Avalanche growth then? Why are big players suddenly piling on in? And this is kind of where things get even more interesting, right? Avalanche themselves laid it out in a Twitter thread, almost like a kind of highlight reel of recent wins. First one is actually a big one, right? It's the SkyBridge Capital. Now, if you're not familiar, SkyBridge is the investment firm funded by Anthony, right? Yeah, that's the Mark from Wall Street, right? Now, these guys announced that they're tokenizing a whopping $300 million of one of their flagship hedge funds on Avalanche. So let that sink in. $300 million worth of hedge fund directly on the blockchain. Now, that's a huge deal because hedge funds are as kind of TradFi as they kind of get. Bringing them on chain is kind of like merging two different worlds. And they're doing it with, the help of a tokenized platform called Token I guess that's Token and a finance giant actually named Apex Group. Now, I've never heard of Token, but it's an interesting one. And Apex Group is no joke either, right? They oversee more than $3.5 trillion in assets globally. So the fact that a firm that massive is actually comfortable partnering in this Avalanche tokenization project is a pretty big trust signal for Avalanche's tech. Next up, there's this institutional grade protocol called Grove. And it's set to actually launch on Avalanche. Now, these people, they actually plan to bring up about $250 million in real-world assets onto Avalanche as part of their initial rollout. So add that to the pile. That's another $250 million, potentially coming on chain. And it's like every other week, Avalanche is adding hundreds of millions of dollars in assets from traditional finance. And it's not just these niche finance companies either. JPMorgan, yes, that JPMorgan Chase, one of the biggest banks on the planet, has been quietly experimenting with Avalanche's blockchain. So when I read that, I had to blink twice. JPMorgan has its own blockchain initiatives. They called, they created JPM coin and all of that, right? So for them to kind of tinker with Avalanche, that Avalanche has something special then. Maybe it's the tech, maybe it's the regulatory compatibility, maybe they just want to try everything. But that's a huge validation. Then I see Wyoming, the US state known for its cowboys and apparently crypto-friendly laws. They chose Avalanche to launch the first ever state-issued stablecoin. I mean, talk about mainstream adoption. Now, a state government saying, we're going to create a digital dollar and we're picking Avalanche to do it. Well, if you're not bullish, if that's not a bullish sign of confidence, I don't know what is. Now, it also makes me kind of chuckle because you probably have people in Wyoming who have no idea what Avalanche actually is, but soon their state might be using it under the hood for financial stuff. But there's also more. Franklin Templeton, right, or Franklin Templeton, a massive asset managing firm. We're kind of talking $1.6 trillion in assets under management, an absolute giant. Now, they decided to use Avalanche for its tokenized money market fund. They basically have this fund called BENJI, that's BENJI, and it's basically a money market fund that's been tokenized, and they moved it onto Avalanche. Now, this is actually the first US-regulated mutual fund to operate fully on a public blockchain. And they didn't go with Ethereum or some kind of private hyperledger thing. They went with Avalanche. Now, that speaks volumes about Avalanche's capabilities, because Avalanche is pretty fast and it can handle a lot of transactions cheaply. Big institutions, they care about that. Now, here is where it gets even wilder and kind of fun. Toyota's blockchain lab, built a prototype on Avalanche. And yeah, Toyota as in the cars. They created something called the Mobility Orchestration Network, MON, on Avalanche, a blockchain-based framework to help share data and trust between different parts of the transportation world. Think cars, dealerships, service centers, all sharing info seamlessly and securely. Now, it's kind of like it's just a prototype, but not a production-ready system yet. But the fun fact is that Toyota is testing it on Avalanche, and it's kind of like, wait, Avalanche is now in auto tech too, right? My mind is officially blown at this point, right? Because Avalanche is branching out everywhere. And Avalanche isn't ignoring the crypto native stuff either. They've partnered with community accelerator called Launch Loop to make a platform named Funtico, or Funtico, in fact, right? The official kind of indie gaming platform on Avalanche. So now Avalanche is like, come and build your indie games here. We'll support you. So they clearly want a piece of the blockchain gaming pie too, which if you're non-serious, if you've seen some of the NFT games explode in the past, then you kind of have at least it can be pretty huge for user activity generally. Oh, and it doesn't stop there. Back in June, a project named Blockticity launched on Avalanche-powered Layer 1 to, authenticate over $1.2 billion worth of transactions in supply chains, right? They issued these AI-ready certificates to enhance transparency and prove authenticity of products. So essentially, Avalanche's tech is being used to track and verify supply chain data, making sure that things are legit and not tampered with. And they processed over $1 billion doing just that. For a supply chain nerd like me, and okay, maybe I'm not a supply chain nerd per se, but I appreciate a good old use case, well, that's super cool and very real world. Not some hypothetical promise, but actual cargo and goods being tracked via Avalanche. So by now you probably see a pattern. Avalanche is on a tear. It's attracting major projects across finance, governments, automotive, gaming, supply chains, you name it. So why Avalanche layer? Right? And a big reason is that Avalanche is EVM compatible, meaning that it speaks the same language as Ethereum, so developers can pull apps over rather easily. And it's built to be really fast and able to handle a whole ton of traffic. Now, it won't grind to a halt if a lot of people use it all at once. Now, Avalanche also has this kind of neat feature where you can create subnets, basically custom mini blockchains that plug into Avalanche. That kind of likely appeals to, let's say, institutions who want their own sandbox, but with the security and reliability of a much bigger network. Now, all of those features make Avalanche a pretty sweet spot for companies that want to dip a toe into kind of blockchain technology without dealing with some of the downsides, I should say, of older platforms. Now, the networks basically kind of lets you, at least lets traditional institutions, I should say, bring their assets on-chain pretty easily. It opens up new ways for them to distribute those assets. It gives them new utility. Imagine a hedge fund that can share, you could actually trade, 24/7 or use as collateral in DeFi. And it enables blockchain native products that can just, that just aren't really possible off of chain. And these big players, they're actually like discovering a new superpower or a secret sauce. Now, realizing all of this, I had that moment then. It hit me that Avalanche wasn't sleeping at all during that bear market. It was actually building. And it was like the quiet kid in class who doesn't really say that much, then one day surprises everyone by winning the science fair, right? Now, I remember earlier in the year, Avalanche news wasn't exactly grabbing huge headlines, and I'll admit, I kind of just tuned out. And meanwhile, of course, they were methodically making these moves. And, well, when I saw that tweet pop up on, on Twitter or on X or whatever we're going to call it about RWA surge, it was kind of like the curtain got pulled back and I finally saw the full picture. And you know what? I'm actually grateful, right? I caught that stat when I did. I almost slept on Avalanche completely, and I bet that a lot of other people did too. Now, it's a lesson in crypto and in life, at least for me. Often, by the time that something is super hyped again in price, well, the groundwork, the real kind of magic has actually been happening quietly for months. Avalanche's story quietly, or at least lately, is exactly that, right? If I had, waited until AVAX was, let's say, $50 and then looked into it, why is AVAX pumping? Well, I would be kind of face palming myself so hard seeing all of this stuff that I just told you guys. So I almost kind of missed the AVAX boom, the groundwork of it all, and at least, right? But thankfully, a few clues, they shocked me awake. And now, where does that leave us? Well, or me at least anyway, right? I'm watching that kind of $27 price level like a hawk, and I'm almost becoming a kind of running joke in my head. Has it broken $27 yet? How about now? What about now? Because if it does, maybe that's Avalanche just saying game on. But if, it takes a while, I'm actually okay with that. It gives me and anyone else at least anyone else is interested, time to accumulate or to just do more research without the FOMOing into the crazy pump, right? Now, this might shock you, but I'm not a financial advisor and nothing in this video is financial advice. Cryptocurrencies are highly volatile and you could lose all of the money that you invest. You should always do your own research and consult a qualified professional. After all, your investments are entirely your responsibility, and you should know that nothing is ever guaranteed when it comes to investing. Neither I, this channel, nor YouTube are liable for any losses, and this video is for entertainment and educational purposes only. All right, we had to get that disclaimer out of the way because I've been talking about a lot of exciting stuff here and I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea, right? I'm just sharing what I found and how it changed my perspective. I'm not telling you to go all in on AVAX or anything crazy like that, so please just don't do that. What I will say is this though, Avalanche has forced its way back into, or at least onto my radar, and in a big way. I even kind of brought it up to the community Discord server. Shameless plug, we do have a free educational Discord, the link is in the description. It's kind of where we chat about crypto news, share insights, and yes, occasionally even commiserate, over missed opportunities like this one. So if you want to learn, get advice from peers, or just hang out with people who love this kind of stuff, hop on in. It's totally free and it has a great, is a great way to stay, in the loop. Now, the vibe that I'm getting from others is kind of like mine. Cautious optimism, like, dang, Avalanche is doing a lot. Wonder when the market will notice. Some are already positioning themselves. Others are waiting for the technical kind of confirmation, like, a break of $27 or a clear uptrend. And it's true, right? Nothing is guaranteed. Crypto markets can stay irrational longer than maybe you can stay solvent, as the kind of saying goes. Maybe Avalanche continues to trade sideways for another 6 months despite all of this progress. Maybe some other competitor swoops in and steals a bit of its thunder, though right now Avalanche seems to be having a pretty nice lead in this real-world asset niche. Or maybe, just maybe, when the next bull run gets rolling, Avalanche will be one of the names not just riding the wave, but actually driving it thanks to all of this real adoption. Now, here's one more fall, right? By bridging real-world assets, Avalanche is kind of making crypto less of an island. It's actually tying real economic value, like pieces of traditional funds or real dollars via stablecoins, into a crypto ecosystem. Now, that could make Avalanche somewhat more resilient, or at least more intertwined with the broader financial system. So it's kind of like building a big two-way bridge between crypto and real world. And if you ask me, that's one of the key things that the crypto world needs, right? We have all of these cool blockchain innovations, but if they stay in their own little bubbles, well, mainstream adoption is slow. Avalanche's approach here is actually bursting that bubble quite quickly. So, wrapping up this little adventure here, I went from almost completely missing out on this Avalanche kind of renaissance to, being hyper aware of it. And I learned that sometimes the biggest developments, they aren't actually shouted from the rooftops. They're actually the ones happening quietly and until they kind of reach that kind of tipping point, right? And I think Avalanche is nearing one of those tipping points now. Now, I'm not making any price predictions that are going to be set in stone. I'll leave that to the analysts and their charts. But I will tell you this. I'm personally going to be keeping a close eye on AVAX, accumulating knowledge about Avalanche, and maybe even accumulating a few more AVAX tokens on the dips. But shh. I need more time. Because if even half of these partnerships and tokenization plans play out, Avalanche could be a central player in the next phase of crypto adoption. And wouldn't that be nice to be ahead of the curve for once anyway, rather than just reading the headlines after the fact? Now, I know I would prefer that. So, all right, that is my story and confession over time. Right? I almost let Avalanche's big moments slip on by, but now I'm wide awake and watching. So if you've stuck with me this far, I'm curious, have you been keeping tabs on AVAX and Avalanche, or is this news to you too? Let me know in the comments down below or in the Discord, because I can't be the only one who had this kind of wake-up call. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with me on this journey. If you found it useful or interesting, or at least have enjoyed hearing me kind of ramble excitedly about a new crypto adventure, then do me a solid. Hit that like button and that subscribe button, or even click the next video that is queuing up on the screen right here. Trust me, there's always another twist in this crypto tale, and you don't want to miss it. So I'll see you in the next one.